Now I'm at the spot where I'm going to do the poor man plot for this season, and this is kind of a classic spot that you should run into quite a bit throughout the Midwest. We've got a ridge top here, and it starts to get narrower and narrower as it goes out toward the point. And the farmers now, they use bigger equipment than they used to even 5 or 10 years ago. So they don't want to go back into the very tips of these points anymore and turn around. Their equipment just doesn't fit. So they tend to swing a big arc, and they leave these little back corners unplanted. They can be small, they can be 1/4 of an acre. This one's probably somewhere between 1/4 of an acre and 1/2 an acre. Real common of what you find all over the Midwest now in the back end of these points. They're perfect spots for a poor man plot. They also serve a second purpose. They are perfect spots for what we call the staging area food plots, where the deer come out into a smaller area right after they get out of their beds, and they mill around there a little bit as they're waiting for it to get closer to evening, and then they'll work through those small food plots and out into the larger ag fields. So anytime you can put a small food plot between a bedding area and a larger feeding area, you've got what I call these staging area food plots. They work really well because they're easy to hunt. Generally speaking, you can sneak into them real easy in the afternoon, and the deer will usually feed past you and out into the larger field before you have to climb down and leave in the evening. So these are probably the easiest of all the feeding area type stand strategies that you can hunt. You don't have to have quite as delicate of an exit strategy as you would have if you were hunting the larger field where the deer are going to still be after dark. So anyway, that's what we got here. Let me walk through the steps of these poor man plots. We've done them, I think, every year now for the past 3 or 4 years here on Midwest Whitetail. So there's a lot of footage and a lot of episodes where you can go back to prior years and watch these. It's a great improvement that you can make to your hunting area, whether you own it or whether you hunt on permission, and some people are even doing it on public land. You probably want to check your regulations to make sure that that's legal, but I know a number of people who are putting these little small poor man plots in on public land. Basically, you're trying to get by without using any power equipment at all. We generally will use a chainsaw to clear the brush out and small saplings when we come into a spot that's a little bit more overgrown than this one is. So anyway, first step is clear it. Get all the brush and briars and brambles out that you can. Next step is to spray it with something that's going to completely wipe out everything. So we're talking about a glyphosate type of a product, which is your traditional Roundups. Spray it, get everything killed. We wait about 2 weeks, generally 10 days to 2 weeks. Everything dies and dries down. And that's the most important step, I think, is you don't want to come into it too soon after you've killed it, because you want the stuff to be dry enough that you can put a match to it and you can burn the whole food plot off. That way you get rid of all the residue. We don't have the option here with the poor man plot of doing any tillage. If we did, we could potentially just kill it and then till it. But since we're not going to be doing any tilling, we basically need to get this thing all the way down to a nice seed bed. And the easiest way we found to do that is to kill it, wait for it to dry down, and then burn it off. And then all your residue is gone. We'll come back in with these landscaping rakes, big 3-foot and 4-foot wide landscaping rake, and scruff the surface up, get it so that the texture is a little bit more, I should say porous maybe, or whatever, where you have more opportunities for the seed once you spread them to work their way into the soil and make good contact with the soil. That way when you get the rains, the seed's embedded, it's going to germinate well and it's going to grow well. If you've got a really hard packed surface and you've spread seed on top of that, it's really hard to get good seed to soil contact. You'll get some germination there, but you don't get nearly as much as you would as if you scraped up the surface first with something. This is going to be a really easy one compared to what we've done in the past. In fact, this would be an easy one to do as a traditional food plot using the Cabela's equipment. But we've got another spot in mind for that we'll talk about in a future episode. This is going to be our poor man plot. This is going to be the less sweaty poor man plot because we're not clearing any brush first with the chainsaw, which that suits me just fine. So I'm going to spray it today, come back again in about 10 days to 2 weeks. I'm going to burn it off, and then I'm going to spray it again with, at that time I'll use the Deer Grow Plot Start and whatever fertilizer we need at that point, and then we'll rake it up real aggressively. Then we'll just broadcast the seed, which will be the Frigid Forage Pure Trophy Clover. I like clover in these little small food plots because it can stand up to quite a bit of pressure from the deer, and it's pretty easy to establish, and the Pure Trophy Clover does a real nice job for us here. So that'll be the next step. We'll do all of that when we come back to the spot again in a couple of weeks. So today I'm just going to spray it, and we're going to get this process started. I'd recommend that this is the time to dive into it where you're at too. This is not hard, and it's not rocket science. Everybody pretty much knows how to do this stuff now. If you stop by any co-op, just say, hey, I've got a 1/4 acre spot I want to kill. What do I need to spray on it? They're going to be able to set you up with what you need, and then we'll just take it one step at a time from there. Normally you do a soil test as part of this process too, but we have done so many soil tests on this farm, we got a pretty good idea of what we're dealing with on these ridges. We're going to be a little bit low on pH, and that's where the plot start comes in. And we know that our P and K is always going to be something that you can't have too much of when you're planting clover. So we're just going to go ahead and hit it with a dose of P and K. Nitrogen is the only thing we're not going to put on this because the clover doesn't need it. It creates its own nitrogen, but it does need the potassium and the phosphorus. So we're going to put those on in a pretty heavy amount. It's a small plot, like I said, so it's not like you're looking at a lot of money to do a good job of taking care of it. So we'll fertilize it heavy, spray the plot start on it, which will take care of some of the pH aspects of this spot, and then we'll get the seed down. But if you're going to do a traditional soil test, this would be the stage probably where you would do that. When you've selected the location, you've gone in and sprayed it, you'd have to dig up a few spots within there and take the soil into your local co-op, or you can go to frigidforage.com and they've got soil test kits. You can just get one of those. It's already got the mailing, the shipping attached to it, so you just package it up and then send it off to the lab, and they'll send you your results back just within a few days. So like I said, that's the more standard approach. We've just done it so many times here that we know kind of a shortcut what we're going to need to put on here. Okay, so here's the payoff. Over my shoulder you can see the tree stand location. This is the spot where I shot Curly back in 2013. It was a really nice 10-pointer that we got on trail camera right at the end of the season and into the late season, or the postseason, and hopefully he sticks around. This would be a natural spot to kill him. That stand location didn't really work that well. I mean, obviously the tree's dead now, which is a big negative. You don't want to put stands or hunt stands that are in dead trees because branches can break off and fall if the wind kicks up, and sometimes the tree itself can even fall. So that's not a good option. The other bad thing about this is it's just right on the edge of the plot. And I feel like when the deer step out, they're going to be particularly careful for a while, studying, and then they're going to move out and get comfortable. So I want to be further into the plot and further off from the edge. And if I look out there, I can see a couple of trees, big oak trees that are about 20 yards, 15 to 20 yards off the plot. And those are better options for this spot, because when the deer comes out and studies it, he's not going to see you right away like he would if we were up in this tree, and like he did. Curly actually saw me up in there. So that's kind of one of the basic philosophies of hunting these small plots. I don't like to hunt where the deer come out into the plot. I like to hunt the opposite side, where the deer come through or work their way toward as they're feeding out into the plot. That way you can hunt it with a wind that works for you. It's blowing away from the deer and away from the plot, and the deer are a little bit more comfortable by the time they get to you. So that's how we'll be hunting this. Those tree stands are going to come down. We're going to stick a couple of muddies up in those big oaks over there, and I'm sure we'll bring you some segments from this spot this fall. I'm excited about it already. And so is Duke.